Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. In a very powerful op-ed in Friday's Hindu, my guest addressed the critical question, what does it feel like to be a Muslim in Narendra Modi's India? Or to put it differently, what does it feel like to speak and deliberately not be heard? What does it feel like to be present in a room and yet considered invisible? What does it feel like to be an individual but thought of only as a statistic? Let me put it one more time in a different way. What does it feel like to be called Babar ki aulad? To be taunted with the words Abba Jan? To be repeatedly told, go to Pakistan? And one more time, what does it feel like to be a citizen of India and yet pushed to the very periphery of the country from where you turn and look at the center and ask yourself, do I belong? That is a question that you and I would never have to face, we would never have to answer because we are Hindu. But because they have a different religion, that is a question our Muslim brothers and sisters face every single day. So today, here is your chance to find out how they answer and discover what it feels like to be a Muslim in Narendra Modi's India. My guest is the well-known author and journalist, Ziya Us Salam. Ziya Salam, let me start with that simple, blunt question that framed the introduction. What is it like to be a Muslim in Narendra Modi's India?
It's challenging to be a Muslim today. And I would not call it Narendra Modi's India. I would call it contemporary India because it is my India too, and your India as well. It is challenging in the sense, as a Muslim, you are asked certain questions which you never thought will be asked of you. It's like if you write something against the government or use even on social media, not just in print media or electronic media as such, you are immediately asked to go to Pakistan. If you ask questions of any policy of the government, be it the farm laws, be it the CEA, the easiest thing for the larger society to say is to ask questions of your patriotism. As if you ask questions of this government, you are asking questions of the nation, and that you do not belong, and that your loyalty somehow lies on the other side of the border. It is something which is quite unsettling at a personal level, but also at another level, it steals me. I want to tell all those who repeatedly tell me after every other story of mine to go to Pakistan that no, I belong here. I'll stay here. I'll die here. My father chose India in 1947. I'm not an Indian just by birth. I'm an Indian by choice. My father, back in 1947, was in Lahore. At that time, as we all know, so many millions of people were displaced across religions. Muslims were going to the newly created state of Pakistan, and Sikhs and Hindus were coming to India. At that time, he took a considered decision that his roots are in India and he'll go back to India rather than opt for a theocratic country of Pakistan. And it is the same theocracy which I intend to fight today. If in Pakistan it was about the so-called Islamic State of Pakistan, in India it is the so-called Hindu Rashtra.
Before I question you further, about Modi's India, let me ask you, how different did it feel to be a Muslim when Manmohan Singh and Atal Bihari Vajpayee were prime ministers of this country?
Can I take a little bit back in time? I was in Noida in 91, 92, and a young man at that time. At that time, Babri Masjid Ram Janam Bhoomi stir had just started, and in my area, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad people and some Bajrang Dal guys used to hold a rally every evening, where their favorite slogan was "Musalman ke do hi sthan, Kabristan ya Pakistan." So we used to get a bit afraid and a little bit scared of that. But the day Babri Masjid was demolished on 6th of December, one of my neighbors who had been displaced from Peshawar in Pakistan, a Hindu family, the head of their family came to my house to extend support. She said, "You guys shift to our house for a few days. You are not safe over here." When we insisted on staying at our home, she said, "Okay, in that case, at least one or two of our family members shall sleep at your place so that if somebody knocks at the door at night or tries to attack you guys, we are here to defend you." That was very heartwarming and it gave us a lot of strength at, at a time of crisis. Now we come to 2005, 2020, August 5, when Narendra Modi went to Ayodhya for yet another Bhumi Pujan at Ram Janam Bhoomi Temple. I still live in Noida, though in a separate colony. This time, again, the goons came raising slogans against Muslims. And as a Muslim, we had progressed from being called Babar ki aulad to being called Aurangzeb ki aulad. And they all raised provocative slogans for about 2-3 hours across the colony. They went back and finally settled down for the day, maybe close to midnight. But not one neighbor came to my house to extend support. Not one neighbor came to ask me, "How are you doing? Can we help you in some way?" That is the difference between India of 1992 and India of 2023.
You began the op-ed you wrote for Friday's Hindu with the following sentence: "To be a Muslim is to be voiceless in the new India." That's actually where I picked up the words for my introduction from. So let me ask you, what does it feel like to speak but deliberately not be heard? To be present but deliberately not be seen? To be an individual and a citizen but simply considered a statistic? What does that feel like?
It's deeply disappointing. It's hurtful. It kind of strikes at your very being. You are an Indian, I am an Indian like any one of us. And then suddenly, one not so fine day, we are asked questions merely because of our religion. Particularly, I'm disappointed with our so called opposition parties. You see, the opposition parties, largely the Indian National Congress, and even to a lesser extent, the regional parties like the Samajwadi Party and NCP, etc., even when they hit out at the government for its maltreatment of the minorities and Muslims in particular, they don't have the guts to use the word Muslim in public discourse anymore. Even at the time of elections, when politicians probably lose all inhibitions, this is one thing which has stayed with politicians of Congress and other opposition parties. From no stage will they seek the vote of the Muslims. At the most, they'll use the euphemism of minorities or Al-Sankhyak or something like that in any regional language. To be a Muslim is to be deprived of your voice, is to be deprived of your identity today. Earlier, we were all told as youngsters that we are supposed to be a part of the mainstream, and Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb is part of that mainstream. Today, Muslims are supposed to submerge their identity in the euphemism of minorities, as if there's nothing called a Muslim religion in India, an Islamic religion in India, and that 15% Indians do not exist. It is shameful, it's hurtful.
Let me pick up on some of the things you said. And I'll begin by asking you this. What does it feel like when BJP leaders call Muslims Babar ki aulad, or as they've now started, Aurangzeb ki aulad? When Yogi Adityanath, the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, taunts them by referring to them as Abba Jan. When Anurag Thakur, a member of Modi's cabinet, says Goli Maro Salonko, and when you're repeatedly told, go to Pakistan, what does it feel like?
What do I say? Because we wake up to these things every day. And it is not that we have become immune to something like that. I'm an Indian, I'm a Muslim. When I go to social media on the day of Eid, when I go to my Twitter account, I do look forward to the Chief Minister of UP, because I stay in UP, to at least make a token greeting of Eid. But my Chief Minister doesn't even deem it fit to greet the Muslim citizens of India on the day of Eid, which fortunately the Prime Minister does. But otherwise, all these people you refer to, excuse me, they are like the foot soldiers of the BJP. They are doing and saying what the Prime Minister, because of the august office, cannot afford to be seen doing every day. When Anurag Thakur, excuse me, when Anurag Thakur or his ministerial colleagues ask Muslims to go to Pakistan, there has not been a single occasion when Narendra Modi has asked them to keep quiet. There has not been any occasion when even the judiciary has taken notice of the same incident. It's like you can get away with anything as long as you're hitting at Muslims. You can question their livelihood, you can question their sense of loyalty to the country, you can question their very being, you can question their faith. You had places like Islampur being sought to be renamed simply because the name is Islampur. It was not founded by any king or any so-called invader. You have a place like Muhammadpur in Delhi where the BJP is asking for the place to be renamed. The very word Islam, Muhammad, Ahmad, these are an anathema to contemporary India. And it strikes at the very being of a Muslim. But if anybody thinks that because of that, Muslims are going to pack up and go, no, this is my country, this is my land.
You know, you wrote about this. I'm going to quote from that article you wrote for Friday's Hindu. You said, to be a Muslim today is to wake up to a daily avalanche of hate in social media, political circles, and real life. The assaults at the very being of Muslims continue unabated. And honestly, I can't even imagine what that must be like. It simply doesn't happen to Hindus. And yet, Muslims have had to face calls for genocide from a Dharma Sansad of all places in Hardwar just 15, 16 months ago. What did it feel like when your own countrymen were calling for a genocide of people who share your faith?
See, it's not just a question of the so-called Dharma Sansad, which I call a Dharma Sansad, calling for a genocide. The larger question which is disturbing is the inertia of the judiciary and the administration to take corrective measures immediately. If after the so-called Dharma Sansad, the judiciary had intervened, or the political parties, even the opposition parties, had been vociferous in criticism of something like that, one would have thought that this is the action of a fringe element. But clearly, it is not the action of the fringe element. This is the centrist force. You have people coming right near the home ministry, maybe just 200 meters from the home minister's office, and raising slogans of "Jab mulle kaate jayenge, Jai Shri Ram chillayenge." What kind of a society have we become? The government is not just tolerating these people, it is silently abetting that kind of activity in today's India. And I'll tell you something from my own experience. As you pointed out about my beard, and so to say, I look like a Muslim. Unlike what the Prime Minister said, you don't have to look at my clothes. You can just look at my face and say I'm a Muslim. So one day I went to the bank where my salary used to be transferred. And to tell you the truth, I hardly ever used to go to the bank because of all the online transactions. One fine day, I did go to withdraw some amount. And the teller over there, in a very conspiratorial tone, asked his colleague, "Isko paise de दूं, आतंकवादी लगता है." Now, this is the notion in the common man's mind. If you see a bearded man, which is a clearly Muslim beard, so to say, you equate it with terrorism. And he was taken aback when this so-called Maulana, he even referred to me as a Maulana, almost as a pejorative. When I could speak in English, he was surprised that Maulana Sahab ko Angrezi aati hai. Then he switched over and apologized. And obviously, as a journalist and an author, I could raise a fuss. But imagine the plight of the common Indian Muslim. You go to the Indira Gandhi International Airport or any of the international airports across the country, you are frisked more than once. If you look like a Muslim, if you wear in a certain kind of dress, even if you travel by Delhi Metro closer to Republic Day or 15th August, there's a different kind of frisking if you look like a Muslim. It happens across the board. It has happened to me at fueling stations. Just in Delhi, a couple of years ago, just before the lockdown, so 3 years now, at night I had gone to get my car fueled, and suddenly behind me an SUV came with saffron flags on it. The attendant immediately shifted his attention to that car. When I insisted that you should give me petrol first before that guy because he cannot even leave, my car is ahead of his. He said in Hindi, "Sahab, इनको खुश रखेंगे तभी तो आप भी खुश रहेंगे." The mindset of the common Indian at the grassroots level, at least in urban India, in a place like Delhi or Lucknow or Jaipur or Bhopal, has shifted to appeasing the majoritarianism streak of these people. And Muslims have to be tolerated or maybe even hidden.
So far, we're talking about middle class, educated, economically comfortable Muslims like you. But Indian Muslims live mainly in rural India. They're amongst the poorest, the least represented, and the most denied in our country. On many counts, they actually fare worse than Dalits. So let me ask you, what does it feel like to be a poor Muslim, a man without contacts, a woman without influence in Narendra Modi's India?
It's even worse. It's even worse. You'll see in colonies across urban India, there will be these women from Bihar and Bengal who come down to work as house helps in different houses. Many of them, thousands of them, are Muslim women, but they adopt Hindu names to get an entry into the colony, to get an entry into apartments, and so on and so forth, because they feel that if they give their actual name, they will not be employed. It's the same thing with the labor market, as one of the newspapers, Urdu newspapers, Siyasat, just wrote about. There are so many Muslim laborers, daily wage earners, who would give their name differently just to be able to work at a construction site. Now imagine the plight of such a man when he takes his son or daughter to a school to be admitted over. And so many of them, God forbid, if we ever had to have an NRC, will suffer unimaginably. I've seen their bank accounts, and nowhere in 90% or maybe more than 90% of the cases have their names been spelled correctly. Our Rizwan would be spelled as Rejavan. Mehrun Nisa would be just called Mira Nisa. What kind of thing is that? It's the complete obliteration and erasion of their identity. And as the BJP guys keep calling of economic boycott, it is this segment which tends to suffer the most. Every year in Navratri, the meat shops are forcibly closed across UP, Haryana, now even in Delhi and Madhya Pradesh. It's not the owner who suffers. He can take the loss in his stride of loss of business for a few days. Is the daily wage workers at his place? Is the shop assistants at his place, who are invariably poor Muslims who suffer the most? The Prime Minister is very happy to talk of Pasmanda Muslims, but does he really care for them? He doesn't. Almost all the lynching victims, Muslim lynching victims since 2014, beginning with Muhammad Akhla to the latest one in Maharashtra on the eve of Eid, they are all Pasmanda Muslims. Has he ever gone to the house of any one of them? Has he announced any rehabilitation package for them that the family can start afresh, maybe with a new set of cattle or new shop or any such thing? Whatever this government does is just platitude, nothing else.
You're talking about the cattle lynching, which is another way of targeting and humiliating and attacking Muslims. The truth is, millions of Muslims are cattle traders, they're exporters of meat, and understandably, they're eaters of beef. But today, when they do any of these things, they are liable to be lynched. Do such Muslims live in a state of almost permanent fear?
Absolutely. You go to a place like Mewat, which is supposedly Muslim dominated. So many Muslims who were dairy farmers or were rearing cattle, etc., are trying to move on to other businesses. No fault of theirs, but that's what they feel. Next time, if my son is carrying cattle on a truck or something like that, he could be lynched. We've had cases of Pehlu Khan in that same region, Rakbar also. Before that, in Chittorgarh area as well. So more Muslims are moving away from their age-old livelihood without any alternative means of earning a living. And now you also see those people coming to Delhi and working as daily wage earners, laborers. People who own land in Mewat, who own cattle in Mewat, are now reduced to landless laborers in another city. It's as humiliating as it could be for anybody and as disturbing.
The prejudice that prevails today, and the word prejudice is a euphemism, but the prejudice that prevails is literally, as you said, driving Muslims out of their livelihood, reducing them virtually to penury in many cases. And yet, the man who presides over the system, our prime minister, is determined to reach out to Muslim pasmandas. He clearly believes that if he speaks, they will vote for him, they will join him. Do they trust the prime minister? Or do they fear in their hearts, even if they can never express it in public, that they are being lured into a trap?
I guess increasingly people are beginning to understand that they are being lured into a trap. We have seen so many attacks on mosques in recent times and madrasas. Now, who studies in a madrasa? As the Satchar Committee report also said, only 4% Muslims do. And by and large, they are just first generation learners or boys and girls from extremely poor families. These are the people who are Pasmanda Muslims. And these are the people Prime Minister talks about. But what does he do for their safety? Has he been able to make sure that no mosque will be attacked? No Muslim dairy farmer will be attacked? None. There is a vast discrepancy between what he says and what his administration and what the foot soldiers of his party do to Pasmanda Muslims.
At this point, Ziya Us Salam, I want to go into some of the issues you raised, some of the subjects you touched on in that article you wrote for Friday's Hindu. And first, there's the political aspect. Your article cites the deplorable absence of Muslims in the BJP. The ruling party of India does not have a single Muslim MP in any House of Parliament, and it hasn't fielded a single Muslim candidate in elections in UP, Karnataka, and for an astonishing 25 years in Gujarat. So when the Prime Minister said to the Wall Street Journal journalist Sabrina Siddiqui, there is absolutely no space for discrimination, what thought went through your mind?
He was a smart. He didn't say yes, there's no space for discrimination, but there is a space for political annihilation. And that's what the BJP has done all these years. And it's not just that they're not giving tickets to Muslim candidates. They are also not allowing Muslims to win from other constituencies, Muslim candidates, by redrawing the electoral map of the country. We have seen the latest case in Assam, where Muslims were in a position to affect the electoral fortunes in 29 seats until now. Now it has been reduced to 22. We have seen what has happened in UP. We have a number of seats where Muslims are 30%, 40%, even more than 50% have been reserved for scheduled castes because scheduled castes are there maybe 10%, 20%. We have it in Bahrain, we have it in Nagina, Bijnor, and we also have it in a place like Gopalganj. So what are we talking about? And also just before the elections, as we discovered back in 2018, so many Muslims find their names missing from the electoral rolls. They could have voted in 2014 and all the elections before that. Suddenly 2018 onwards, every fourth Muslim found his name missing from the electoral rolls in Karnataka, in Telangana, even many people in the capital of India, Delhi. So at one place, you're not allowing all Muslims to vote. At another place, you're making the Muslim vote absolutely redundant. At the third place, you are not giving them tickets to contest elections. This is complete invisibilization of India's second largest majority.
The sad truth is that what the BJP is doing, other political parties are now starting to follow. You point out in that Hindu article that 97% of lynchings since independence have happened after 2014. But you add, after Muhammad Akhlaq, and I'm quoting you now, all political parties have lapsed into silent mode. No leader of any political hue has deemed it wise to visit the families of the dead. That's something politicians instinctively, regularly do in their own self-interest. But when the dead are Muslims, no political party wants to reach out. And that's the problem, that after Modi, everyone has now become apprehensive and wary of even being sympathetic and caring to Muslims.
The fact is, all the political parties are following soft Hindutva. And rather than being hurtful for Muslims, which it is also disrespectful towards the secular Hindu of our country, who would not vote against the Congress or any particular political party because its leaders went to Junaid's house or Pehlu Khan's house or anybody in recent times, Tabriz Ansari's house, to express sympathy or grant them some monetary aid to begin life afresh. The common Hindu of this country is still an enlightened Hindu, believing in living peacefully with people of other faiths, as I discovered through this write-up when people wrote to me whatever their sentiments were. Our politicians may not go to the houses of lynching victims for fear of antagonizing the common Hindu. What they do not realize, the common Hindu who doesn't vote for the BJP is a secular Hindu. He believes in pluralist living. He has had a give and take relationship with people of other faiths, not just Muslims, even Christians, Sikhs, etc. And the question of faith doesn't arise first and foremost in their mind. I had a lady who wrote to me from Orissa. She's an 87-year-old lady who had seen partition. And she extended support to me, and she even apologized for the actions of these politicians and the so-called Gorakshaks. It is people like her who give me hope that we shall overcome.
You know, a couple of days ago, there was a very disturbing story about army soldiers forcing Kashmiri Muslims to say Jai Shri Ram in a mosque in Pulwama. The army hasn't denied the story, the army hasn't confirmed the story, but the army is investigating it. Are you becoming worried that this anti-Muslim virus is even beginning to infect the army?
From the looks of it, yes, unfortunate, but it is true. And as far as the slogan of Jai Shri Ram is concerned, it has been hijacked by the Gunda element in the country today. As you rightly said, in 2015, when Akhlaq was lynched, he was lynched on suspicion of cow slaughter. Today, Muslims could be running a tea stall near a railway station or in any obscure town of UP and Madhya Pradesh, and he could still be lynched because the goons will come and hold him by the collar and ask him to say Jai Shri Ram. If he doesn't, they'll kill him on the spot. They've adopted another strategy now. They'll ask him to recite the Kalma, the first tenet of Islam. If he recites the Kalma, then they make sure that he is Muslim. If he does, after that, they'll ask him to say Jai Shri Ram. The moment he refuses to say Jai Shri Ram, the entire mob pounces upon him, as happened with the case of Tabriz Ansari, and as has happened in Haryana in April this year. It's with Nasir. It's something which has been going on, and Jai Shri Ram is used not as a salutation in modern India, but as a war cry. And it all goes back to what L.K. Advani did during Babri Masjid Ram Janambhoomi strike.
You know, 2 days ago in Delhi, Aurangzeb Lane, which inexplicably had not been renamed when Aurangzeb Road was renamed, has suddenly been changed to Abdul Kalam Lane. And this is the latest of a whole series of roads and towns that have had their names changed. Clearly, this is an attempt to obliterate India's Muslim heritage and history. How does it feel to be a Muslim when all connections with your past are being steadily scrubbed out?
No, not all connections are being scrubbed out. The government is very careful to highlight an Aurangzeb and obliterate an Akbar. So when some elements wanted Akbar Road to be renamed, the government very conveniently ignored it. But when a similar demand was made for Aurangzeb, it was obviously changed. The government wants the larger Indian society, and not just Muslims, to remember what Babur did, to remember what Aurangzeb did. The government doesn't want us to remember what Akbar did, what Malik Muhammad Jaisi did, what Ras Khan did, what Ziauddin Abedin did. The government wants you to recall only those who killed in the name of Islam, not who encouraged people of all religion to live peacefully. In the history of medieval India, from 1206 to 1857, there have been only two monarchs which sought to kill in the name of Islam. One was Aurangzeb, the other one was Firoz Tughlaq. But how many times has the government or even our media told us about Iltutmish, who told people at that time when his army wanted to convert the locals, he said, "We are like salt in water. If we raise too much hassles over here, we'll just disappear." He encouraged people of all faiths to live together peacefully. The government doesn't want us to recall all those. It is all convenient politics, nothing else.
Let me take that point one step further. The Prime Minister frequently talks about 1200 years of foreign subjugation. He said this most recently when he was addressing the United States Congress. And that clearly means that he views both the Delhi and the Deccani Sultanates, as well as the Mughals, as foreign. Basically, he's calling Muslims foreigners. What does it feel like when your own Prime Minister effectively is calling Muslims foreigners?
If you recall, he said the same thing back in 2014 when he took oath of office for the first time. And there was no hue and cry raised by most of us at that time. We should have called his bluff at that time. Today, when he says the same thing, he's just emboldened to say the same thing because he feels stronger than ever before. But no matter what he says, in these 1200 years, how many invaders have ruled over India? Yes, Babur was an invader. His son, okay, Humayun was not born in India. After that, all the Mughals were born in India. They died in India. It was Alauddin Khalji who protected the frontiers of India from Mongol invasions. It was Alauddin Khalji who reformed the economy, something we are still following as a template today, with specialized markets for different things, wholesale market, retail market, steps against hoarding, black marketing, etc. He did all of it some 800, 900 years ago, and we're still following that. So, does the Prime Minister of India want to tell us that all these people who built the Taj, who reformed the economy, who protected the frontiers of the country, were invaders, were foreigners? Clearly, his knowledge of history is either whimsical or lopsided, or at the most, selective.
The truth is that these dramatic changes in the way Muslims are treated and thought of, this dramatic change in the way we make Muslims second class citizens, has actually happened under Narendra Modi after 2014. So let me ask you a question that I suppose is inherent in everything I've been asking. How do Muslims view Narendra Modi? What do they think of this man?
Well, I guess most of the Muslims don't think of this man. You ask any Muslim organization or any so-called Muslim body, will they invite Narendra Modi, the BJP leader, to their premises? No. They will invite him, yes, as the Prime Minister of this country. We all have to respect the office he occupies. But as an individual, no. And it is deeply hurtful. We had Mohan Singh talking of the minorities having the first right to resources of this land, and there was an outcry in the polity in the society. But today, when every day he lashes out at the Muslim community, and not just in election campaigns when he talks of हम आतंकवादियों को कपड़ों से पहचानेंगे or something like that. The larger society is very happy to go along with him, at least in urban India. It's left to a portal like the Wire or a newspaper like the Hindu and a couple of others to call his bluff. Tell me if anybody has taken him to task for what he said in the US. Nobody will ask him to be correct with these facts. He could go to Bihar and say, यहाँ पे तक्षशिला यूनिवर्सिटी बनाई गई जो कि आतंकवादियों ने या invaders for whatever he used to say उन्होंने आके गिरा दिया. Nobody will tell him that Takshila doesn't exist in Bihar. It never has. He will go and talk of Nalanda and blame Bakhtiar Khaldi over there, not come to the root of the problem. He'll go and talk of Bhagat Singh going to Andaman and Nicobar Island. His knowledge of history is laughable, and I don't think he deserves much consideration.
We're coming to the end of this interview. It's been a depressing, disillusioning, disheartening, even distressing subject that we've been discussing. But I want to try and end on a positive note. You told me last night when I arranged this interview with you, and you've hinted at it in one of your answers earlier, that when your article was published in Friday's Hindu, you've had a lot of warm and reassuring responses from Hindus. They've reached out to share your pain, to express solidarity and support. Tell me a bit about that.
Yes, I guess that is something which was the best outcome of that article in the Hindu. I had people across the country, my non-Muslim countrymen and women, reaching out to me, expressing solidarity, expressing faith in the Indian system, in the constitution, and believing in the idea of India. People wrote to me from Orissa, as I said, and also from places like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, but that is to be expected from South India. But even from a place like Ahmedabad in Gujarat, somebody in Kashmir wrote to me. They all believe that what this government is doing to Muslims is intolerable and unjustifiable, no matter what political hue you might be having. In their support, in their words of warm solidarity, lies the hope for the idea of India. And therein lies the hope for Muslims of India. And that is what I also hope, that tomorrow, in solidarity with people across religions, we shall be able to revive the India which our forefathers founded back in 47.
My very last question, and I suspect that it's redundant because you've given the answer multiple times in this interview, but nonetheless, I will ask it up front. In the present circumstances, do you want to continue to be an Indian citizen? And if the answer is yes, tell me why.
Yes, I am an Indian. I will die an Indian. It's as simple as that. I will not allow anybody to intimidate me. I will not be intimidated by those people, and also I will not fulfill their dreams of having a Muslim Mukt Bharat.
Ziya Us
It's
Salam.
my land, it's not your land, it's our land. The
That's
governments
very-
come and go.
That's very true. This is our land, our home, our country, and we are one people. Thank you for speaking to me. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.